Let me set the scene for you guys. I've already turned it off ages ago. So let me set the scene for you guys, okay? So we're going to look at these powerful verses in Exodus. But first of all, we're going to set the scene. So the children of Israel had come out of Egypt. God had set them free by his miraculous power. And they were stuck in a place where there was a very narrow passage on a large beach and the Red Sea in front of them. And then the Egyptian army comes barreling in. God is a pillar of fire that's separating the two, but they're very close. So this whole massive Egyptian army, I don't know how many, there would have been a lot, over 100,000, maybe 200,000, maybe 300,000, I don't know, but a lot. Very intimidating. Lots of chariots. And these guys weren't like, hey, you forgot your keys, or we're the goodbye party and we've come to see you off. These were people that had their lives so profoundly affected by the exit of the children of Israel that each one of them would have lost a son, that would have had nephews and brothers and people that were gone. They were not happy. They were out for blood. Can you imagine the screams and the cries from these people that were out for blood and what that would have meant? How much that was affecting the children of Israel as they were in between them and the sea. And so let's see what Moses says in Exodus 14:13. Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand still. See the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see again no more. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace." And then the Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to move forward." I think each one of us can relate to this. Being stuck between a rock and a hard place. Being stuck in a place where it feels like the devil has got you backed up against the wall and you are under pressure. It's like the edge of uncertainty, and it's fear and doubt. And the fear and doubt for these people would have been suffocating. It would have consumed their thoughts, and that's what it's like for us when we're in a place of real pressure, where we feel like we're in between a rock and a hard place, where we're under this immense pressure. This fear and doubt wants to consume our thoughts. And sometimes it's so loud with the voice of fear and doubt that it becomes really difficult for us to hear the word of the Lord, to hear what God is speaking to our lives. Do we stay or do we move forward? And that's exactly what was happening to the Israelites in this verse. Because Pharaoh's army's behind them, the Red Sea's in front of them. So, like the army's wanting to destroy them, and the sea's like this impassable barrier. What are they going to do? Fear's screaming at them. Doubt. Panic. It's producing absolute panic in their lives. But Moses tells them, "Don't be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." But a few verses on, God tells them to do something different. He says, "Why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward." They're like, stand still, move forward. It sounds like a contradiction. It sounds like God is telling them to do contradictory things, but it's not. God's teaching them and us very important lessons here. Because there's a time for us to stand in faith, and there's a time for us to move forward in obedience. But in both of these circumstances, both of these positions, God's the one who fights for us.
That's good, Peter.
So how do we know when to stand still and when to move? Because like Moses says, don't be afraid, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. which He will accomplish for you today. Because sometimes trusting in God and trusting in who God is doing nothing. Sometimes it means standing still and waiting.
Yeah.
It's like God tells us in Psalm 46:10. God says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know who I am. So why does God ask us to stay still? It's to silence the fear. It's to silence the fear and doubt in us, because when we hear this voice of fear, it can be so loud in our lives. It causes us to act impulsively. It causes us to act out of a place of anxiety when we make rash decisions and make really foolish choices because we're panicked. And we need to stay still. We try and fix the problem ourselves instead of waiting for God. We rush ahead like a bull at the gate. How many times have I done this? How many times have you done this? Like, it's just this fear, like deafening in your ear, and you've got to I've got to go, I've got to do this, and this anxiety builds in you. But the truth is that fear is always silenced by the truth, and that's why Moses tells the children of Israel the truth. In Exodus 14:13, he says, "The Lord will fight for you. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace." This truth that the Lord will fight for us, is the reassurance, and it is truth. And that truth is given to us throughout the Word of God. And that truth should silence the voice of fear in our lives. Now this verse is another very powerful verse that God has spoken to the children of Israel in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 31:6. They were about to go into the promised land. They had suffered for 40 years in the desert. I mean, there'd been a lot of stuff go on that we're not going to go into, but they'd been told there's giants in the land, and the land's really it's fortified. There's fortified cities. There's a lot of fear ahead of them, and there's a wilderness behind them, and they're in the same position again. And this is what God says. He says, "Be strong and of good courage. Do not fear, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord your God, He is the one who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you." This is the truth. There's needs to be our reset button, our datum point, our beginning and end. We must come back to this when fear is surrounding us and panic opens the door. This needs to be our reset point, our button where we go back. This is truth. This is the truth that we need to grab hold of with both hands to silence the fear. Because Moses tells them the same thing. You shall hold your peace. And when you look at this word hold in the Hebrew, it means to be silent or to be quiet or to be still. It means to stop striving, to cease from the action. Just calm your farm is what it's saying. It's like hold your tongue. Stop from blurting out things. Just relax. Hold fast. Hold in shalom. That's what peace means. Stay in peace. Stop panicking. Stop freaking out. This needs to be where we remain calm and allow God to handle the situation for us without running around like a headless chook. Because that's what I want to do when I'm in this place of fear. I want to run around like a headless chook. I want to lose my mind and go forward in a way where I'm going to really cause destruction in my own life. And that's the importance of understanding the declaration that God gives us when He says, "Be still and know that I am God," because God is greater than any situation we're facing. God is greater than any fear that may be coming and speaking and screaming into our ears. God's greater because God is the great I am. He is the trump card. He's the one that silences every fear. knowing the truth of who God is, gives us the faith to move when it's time to step out.
That's true.
And that's why Exodus 14:15 says, God said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. So after telling them to stand still, God has told them to move forward. When we are in peace, when we remain in peace, it's much easier for us to have trust and faith in God. Like we talked about last week when we were looking at James, when James was saying faith without works is dead, it's faith without actions. Faith must have an action. Faith must have a forward motion and action. It's not just in our words, it actually means to go forward. When we remain in peace, it's easier, it's so much easier to hear the still small voice of God talking to us and calling us forward. Peace is what silences the fear that stops us from hearing the voice of God.
Wow.
God called the Israelites to move forward because there was a miracle waiting for them. If they stayed in the one place, they wouldn't see the miracle of the sea parting. They would have not witnessed the miraculous power of God if they stayed in one place, because breakthrough comes and it requires obedience. They heard God's command to move forward. Like I said, faith requires action. They could have heard God's voice, they could have heard God's command and stayed on the beach and not witnessed the miraculous. Because fear wants to paralyze, but faith is obedient. It calls us to move forward. And I love the example of my mate, the Apostle Peter. And I love this example that that is given to us in Matthew 14:28. And Jesus is walking on the water in the midst of the storm in the middle of the night, and they freak out. They think that they've seen a ghost, and they're like, oh, it's the Lord. And it says in verse 28, Peter answered and said to him, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. So he said, come. And Peter said, and when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink and cry out, Lord, save me. You know, Pete gets a bad rap here because most of the time people are focused on the fact that he sunk because his faith wasn't strong enough. He was looking at the wind and the waves, and that's most of the context that we take out of this verse. But Peter had the faith to follow God's command with obedience. It's amazing. I don't know what I'd do in that situation. Even in the midst of the storm. Like there's wind and there's waves around Peter already. It's already bad. And he has the obedience to step out of the boat. Because Peter trusted in who God is. This gave him the faith to step out of the boat, and that is where God performs miracles. Miracles wouldn't have happened for Peter if he stayed in the boat. Miracles wouldn't have happened for the children of Israel if they remained on the beach. Or if they hadn't crossed the Jordan into the promised land, that God was with them. They would have still been in the wilderness. The miraculous happened when they followed the command of God, when they were obedient to walk out in faith.
That's right.
And it's the same for us. We will never ever experience the miraculous in our lives unless we walk and step out in that faith. And this also demonstrates that fear that gripped Peter. It's also such a powerful demonstration of what fear does to us when we're trying to walk in the miraculous. How easy it is to take away that miraculous power of God, because Peter saw the wind and the waves and he took his eyes off Jesus. Then he began to sink. So fear definitely has a massive influence in our lives that robs us from the miraculous. So let's look at the example. When he saw the wind and the waves was boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, "Lord, save me." Fear is a liar and a robber. And it wants to stop us. It wants to rob from us from walking in the miraculous power of God. And that's why Moses tells the children of Israel in Exodus, and the Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. Why are you complaining to me? Just move forward. You've got my voice." Another great thing that we can take from Peter in this interaction that he has with Jesus, this experience when he walked on water, is when he began to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." And we can see Jesus' reaction in Matthew 14:31. And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "Oh, you have little faith, why did you doubt?" It's essential for each one of us to understand this. When God calls us out, he's always going to be there to catch us when we cry out to him. He'll never ever leave you or forsake you. And I've been reading this psalm this week, 118, verse 5 and 6. "I called on the Lord in distress. The Lord answered me and set me in a broad place. The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do to me?" When we cry out to God, he is always there for us. He's always there for us. We can experience the same level of care and the same level of support that Peter had when he cried out to Jesus, and Jesus immediately reached out, caught him and lifted him up. God will never ever call us out to fail. God didn't call Peter out of the boat to fail, and when Peter failed, he was there to catch him. That's the reassurance. There's one really important thing that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at all of these contexts. God won't always take you out of the storm, but he will always join you in the middle of it. When Peter cried out, the storm was still raging. When he cried out to Jesus, "Jesus, save me," Jesus didn't still everything and calm down the storm and the wind and the waves. He just caught Peter and he was with Peter in the storm. It wasn't till Peter got into the boat that Jesus quietened the waves. Because it says that in verse 32, and it says, when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. So the wind and the waves were still boisterous. They still didn't calm down. Jesus was just with Peter in it to hold him. God didn't remove Daniel from the lion's den, but he did shut the mouth of the lions. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, Jesus was with them in the fire. Didn't remove them out of the furnace, but he was with them in the furnace. God didn't remove them. The miraculous wasn't avoiding the storms, the fire, or the den. The miraculous was that God was with them in the situation, in the middle of it. So why does God just leave us to face the fire and the storms? Because the storms build our faith. They're good for us. They really are good for us. It doesn't sound like James says it, count it all joy, because it builds us up. The storms build our faith. The fire refines our character. And the lion's den reveals God's miraculous power to us. So we trust in him. We see him move. God's promise isn't to take us out of there, but his promise is to be with us in there. Like Isaiah tells us in Isaiah 43:2, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned. You will pass through the water, you will go through the fire, but he will be with us. We're never promised an easy path. In fact, we are promised the opposite. We are promised storms, fire, and floods. But what we can count on is God's promise to never leave us and to never forsake us. Just going to finish on this thought, because it's very important that we understand that we are hearing God's voice to move or to stay still. It just reminds me of that song, "Should I stay or should I go now?" I don't know who that's by. Sorry, it's just stuck in my head. But it's one of the hardest things in our Christian life is knowing when to stay and when to move. But in both, like we said before, we're going to hear God's voice if we're open to hear it. And God's voice always aligns with His word. God doesn't go against what He has written in His word. It's not word for word, but it aligns. How God's speaking with you must align with the word of God. He'll never ask you to do something that contradicts His word. Never, ever, ever. God's word is concrete. It's set. If God went against His word, that's it. The whole lot falls down. God never contradicts His word. And God's peace confirms His direction. His peace always, like if we're walking in His peace, if we're walking in His direction when He's called us out, if you're not feeling a place of peace and security in that, you need to question the path that you're on. His peace will guide you. And His timing is always important. And it's always important for us to understand this, because God may be asking you to wait because He's preparing you for what's coming. He's preparing you for the next season. It's not a delay, it's a preparation. Yeah. He's not holding you back, but He's getting you ready. He's aligning us for His purpose, preparing us for His purpose in the next season. In His stillness, God speaks peace and promise, and in the emotion, it's guidance and confidence. And whether it's waiting for God to move, God still speaks. And that peace that we have will allow us to hear that small, still voice of God. Just like Isaiah tells us in Isaiah 30:21. Your ear shall hear a word behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in it." Whether you turn to the right hand or to wherever you turn to the left, or whenever you turn to the left. God is not hiding His voice or direction from us. God's not sitting there going, "Oh, see if they can work it out by themselves." God wants us to know His will. He wants us to know the direction that we are walking in. And when we obey, God makes the way. Look at the result for the children of Israel in Exodus 14:21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night. And he turned the middle of the sea into dry land, and made the sea into dry land. And the waters He divided. That's the miraculous. That's the miraculous. God called them out. If they stayed still, they wouldn't have seen it. It wouldn't have parted. But they had to be obedient to move forward. And like I said before, obedience unlocks miracles. When you move, God makes a way. When you trust, God opens doors. When you step out, God walks with you. We need to ask ourselves, what miracle can obedience unlock in my life? Remember, church, God fights for you. God is on your side. That's the truth. That's the truth that silences fear. Whether God tells you to stand still or move forward, one thing never changes: He fights for you. Whether you're standing still or moving forward, He fights for you. He's always with you. It's absolutely essential. when we are moving forward with God, that we know we are hearing from God. Because there's very serious consequences if we're not listening to his voice, if we're moving outside of the will of God. When we rely on our own understanding instead of hearing the will of God, it can lead us to a place of destruction. Moving ahead without God's direction can take us down a path that seems good, but it ends in loss and pain and regret. We must be certain. I can't overemphasize this enough. We must be certain that we are hearing God's voice. That He is talking and speaking into our lives, and we are not hearing another voice. It's just like Peter gave us the example. And when Peter answered and said to him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Lord, if it is you, command me to go forward. There are people, and I've heard stories, that have literally lost their lives trying to walk on water. They have done really foolish things like jumping into rapids, saying, "God's spoken to me, I can walk across this river," and they have drowned and died. They've lost their lives because they're not hearing from God. There's consequences. And we have an enemy, and his entire purpose is to deceive us. He wants to lead us on a path that is outside the will of God. He wants to lead us in a way that's not right. Like Proverbs 14:12 tells us, there's a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way of death. And I'm going to give you an example in my own life. Recently, I've been on this, God led me out into some deep water, and it was like, yes, I had his peace, and so I kept moving forward. But then something came up in the middle of it that removed his peace, and I was so aware with the fear of the Lord in me that the consequences of moving forward and going on outside the will of God would have had really bad repercussions for us as a church, for us as a family, and in my own life. And I felt the fear of the Lord. I was like, I don't want to be outside your will. I can't be. I'm not going to walk down that road where I'm going to suffer the pain, the loss, and the consequences of something that is my decision. And I felt the weight of that. And I had to change the direction that I was on because God's voice was speaking to me, and I felt so powerfully that the peace was removed from me. I no longer had the peace to walk in this direction because God was speaking and saying, don't go down that road. It has serious consequences. And I knew it. And I thank God, because when I made the decision to stop going down that road, I felt such a peace of God on my life. It was such a relief because I knew that I was in the will of God once more. It's so essential that we don't go in a way that seems right to us, because the end is the way of destruction. But remember, the Lord is on your side. He will fight for you. We don't need to be afraid. And when we move and when we walk in His will, with His reassurance, we can have confidence to move forward even if it is stormy, even if we've got to walk through fire, even if we've got to be in the middle of a furnace. We can move with confidence. There's nothing like the reassurance that God has called you out. You can walk through walls. It's like David. He's like, I can leap over a wall. I can run through a troop. David's got the confidence that God's with him. He can go anywhere and do anything. All things are possible. Whatever He is asking you to do, whether it's to stand still or whatever He's asking you to do to move forward in faith, He's going to be with you. One thing's for sure, and I want you to really take this away from this, is God, He is on your side. He's for you. He's not against you. He's not waiting for you to stuff up and make a mistake, and he's not going to be standing there laughing while you're on the ground. He's going to be the one to catch you. He's going to be the one to pick you up. He's going to be the one to love you and support you. God is on your side. That's the one thing that we need to have, that reassurance. That should be our reset button. He's for you. He's not against you.
My Bible, when Peter was preaching from Exodus 13 and 14, and something stood out to me, and I believe this is for someone today, because Peter's word is so significant for you, if that's you, because we need to trust in God's leadership and his timing. In verse 17 it says, "Then it came to pass when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God said, lest perhaps the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt." So I don't know if you know this, but geographically, the shortest route was about 1 week. But God allowed them the Israelites to be led into a trap on that beach. He allowed that to happen. And he allowed them to come to that place of understanding that I need to learn how to be still and trust God in this. God led them in that way, by way of that trap, where it looked like they couldn't go forward, so that his power and his glory and his deliverance could be made manifest for his people. And I want that to speak to you today, because in God's leadership and his timing, sometimes he allows us to go the long way in the wilderness. Sometimes he allows us to skip the shortcuts in order to be conditioned and prepared for what he has for us. And he needs us to know, that we know he is God, that he can do that. He's got to get the I can do it myself out of us, each and every one of us. And if he's got to lead us by way, the long way, seemingly into a trap, because that's what it looked like for the Israelites, in order to teach us that he is God and I will do it. Trust in me. Be still. Learn how to be still. Learn how to silence the fear. Fear's got to know its place. It's the voice of the enemy. We've got to learn how to discern false evidence appearing real. And then we've got to know, just like Pastor Pete preached, how to move forward when he speaks. And we'll only know that by being still and stopping with the manipulation and the my way. You know, when God is continuously agreeing with everything that we want, say or do, I dare say that's not God. You've made a God out of your own wants, needs and understanding. God will never agree with everything that we want, say or do. His word is the truth. His word is our foundation. We don't want to make ourselves an idol. We want to listen to God, learn how to be still with him, and learn how to move forward.